Deanna here, and thanks so much for being here. So today's video is going to be a bit of a different one. It's going to be a bit more personal for me. It's not going to be anything really book related. So if that's what you subscribe to or what you like on my channel, this might not be up your alley, and it might not be something you want to listen to or hear of, and that's okay. That's your right. Let's take your space and you consume what you enjoy and want to consume. For me, however, I hope that it sparks a conversation that I think is something that is important to be said, and it affects probably more people than we realize, and that's because of how taboo this subject is. So even just talking about it is making me a little anxious, and it's just because of how society views talking about this taboo subject. So I'm going to be talking about possibly some graphic things, maybe a little TMI in some people's opinion, but I just want to be as honest and real as possible in my sharing of my story. I don't even know what this story completely is done, because it's very much an evolving situation. I just wanted to document some of what I'm going through. For the majority of my life, since I started my menstrual cycle, I have always had fairly regular cycles from what I always knew. Prior to giving birth, they could be pretty painful sometimes. They were fairly heavy at times. I remember being very nauseous, having a lot of just pain and discomfort, and I would have cramps so bad that I would literally be almost bedridden for the first couple days and have some real stomach issues going on. And then I had my son, and about 10 years ago now, I had my only biological child, and that was a whole other story time I could probably get into of going through that labor and delivery. But with that, there was the typical afterbirth recovery, which sometimes you're just not quite prepared for as a woman, but that finally settled down, and for the last 10 years I have had very regular periods. I track it on an app, and it's practically to the day, almost, maybe a day or either way, like before or after that day of expectance, but it's always within a pretty manageable range, and so I could pretty much count on this is when my period's gonna be. And it really helped having one of those apps to just track, to make plans and things like that. So for quite a while it was just I have it. I would have, just to talk about that a bit, it was typically lasting between 5 to 7 days, but usually average more about 5 days. That was heavy for the first 1 to 2 days, maybe day 2, 3 might be pretty heavy, and then it just tapered right off and would be nothing, and then on to the next month. I will say, through this though, around the time that I had my son, I was getting regular pap tests, which are your regular tests to just check to see if there's any type of concern of cervical cancer or anything like that. And at one point, I don't know if it was before his birth or after his birth, I believe it was after, I was flagged for having abnormal cells. Nothing super concerning, but something just as they weren't your typical normal cells. I can't get into the real meat end of that because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a gynecologist. I can't really tell you the medical side of it. I can just tell you what I was told, and I was told they were abnormal cells. They could potentially turn cancerous or be precancerous if they were left untreated. So I was referred to a local gynecologist, and went to a hospital visit to essentially have them lasered off of my cervical area. And I went in and yeah, they wanted me to have it up on the screen to see, and I was, no, I was not interested because I just wanted it done and get out of there. And then the aftercare was for me to be monitored for a bit, just to see if they would continue to be abnormal or if we could continue to get normal, healthy pap tests results and then continue from there. So this happened, and I was supposed to be on like a regime of every year I was going in. Something somehow happened where that got miscommunicated and I stopped before I was supposed to. So they have now recommended, now that especially things opening up and just getting, you know, better access lately, there was a communication to me of, let's get you back on that yearly cycle, that yearly check, just to make sure that they continue to be yearly for at least 5 years, that we want to monitor it. I am happy to report that at least my last one came back as regular, came back as normal, so that's hopefully good. It should be good. That's what you expect it to be good. But then so that would have been like a month or so, maybe a couple of months ago, when I had that done and it came back good. I think it was the end of last year, possibly. So probably about, you know, we're in June right now when I'm recording this, and I probably got that done about December or so maybe. So it was good within the last year at least. I had a normal one, and I had blood work done and all kinds of stuff because I was just having a regular checkup and just following up, and I had some other things going on that weren't related quite to this, at least that we know of so far yet. In May, I was late, and I was considerably late. As I said, I always had very regular cycles. They were always very, like, could depend on them. And then it was, okay, I'm more than a day. All right, that's not too, you know, nothing to be concerned of yet. Okay, now I'm 3 days. Okay, now I'm 7 days. Okay, I'm like 10 days. And I think finally I took a pregnancy test between 7 and 10 days. It was somewhere in there. I took 2 pregnancy tests because I was like, okay, I have not gotten a period at all, not even like a whiffle of one. What is going on? And I was at least a week late. But the funny thing is that when we had my biological son 10 years ago, my husband got snipped. So he had a vasectomy. So he ain't shooting shooters anymore. He's got nothing coming out then that should be causing a pregnancy. So after I hadn't gotten my period for at least a week, I wanted to do a pregnancy test because I grew up, for one, watching TV shows like I Didn't Know I Was Pregnant, from the TLC series where it was like, I was pregnant and didn't know it. I grew up watching some of those. And 2, I follow Dr. Mama Jones on YouTube, who is fantastic and very informative gynecologist. And her recommendation is anytime you don't have a period, take a pregnancy test. So that's what I did. I took a pregnancy test because even though my husband snipped, who knows sometimes those mysteries of life. So I took two of them just to be sure, and they both came back negative. So then I was just like, well, what is going on? So then it was day 10 late. So 10 days late, I start bleeding. And it was weird bleeding. It wasn't normal bleeding in the way that it was super heavy. It was actually very clotty in a lot of ways. Again, a lot of TMI, so just be prepared for that. And it was more prevalent when I wiped. Anytime I wiped, there was blood. There was definitely blood. So I was definitely bleeding, and there was like spotting and stuff happening in my underwear. So again, I was still kind of like, what is going on? And we continued, this was mid-May that I started bleeding. It is now June, beginning of June, first week of June. The good news is that it seems to be tapering out now, but we're talking 24 days later. 24 days later. That's a long time to be bleeding. I'm just being very frank and honest. That's a long time. That's something that I've heard definitely the horror stories of some women just going much longer and things like that. And that's kind of why I'm doing this as well, because when I started finally bleeding, it didn't stop. And I felt like I had nothing to really gauge on it. I was trying to avoid the scary spiraling on Google, because that can get like, oh my God, you're dying, you've got, cancer and things. But this is actually something, is it? I don't know. I had precancerous potential things lasered off before. Is it something I should be concerned about? So I want to say after 10 days, apparently I was really around that 10 and 10 mark, I called my doctor. Because when I first got it, I was like, okay, it's going to be kind of a weird period because it was late, but it's just going to be my period. And then I was continuing to bleed. And after normally having it for 5 days to maybe 7 at the most, and I'm still having it on day 7, that was a call to my doctor. And that was a call to say, hey, this is what's going on. What is happening? And some of the first words out of his mouth were, you're kind of young to be going through like the change. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of what I mean, I'm just on the other end of the mid-30s. Didn't think it would be that early. And the really frustrating thing is I don't even know right now. Because we talked, I had a nice conversation with my doctor. We got, blood work booked. We got an ultrasound scheduled, which it's gonna essentially be an internal one, which I have to go and do that in like next week or so. And it's just trying to figure out what's kind of going on. But as I'm talking to him, he was asking questions like, when was your last one, and what's this and this, and just asking about my cycle. And we got talking about how I brought up the point to him that this is kind of a taboo subject. Like, nobody sits around really, or at least no one where I grew up and stuff, really sat around and talked openly about period cycles and talked about what happens in a woman's body. And that's sad to me in so many ways, because there are almost about, typically, if you're looking at it statistically, about 50% of the population have a uterus. 50% of us have a uterus. Some of us have our own horrible experiences that I just feel for so many that go through so many different issues. Endometriosis, like polyps, there's so many that I can't even think of them all, because there's so much about the women's body that is just not as well known as it should be, considering it is 50% of the population, considering how many of us are walking around with uteruses and getting periods, and we don't really have the information that there should be about it. And there's not conversations happening as much as there should. It's a bit of, when I had my first period, it was a bit of like, oh, you're gonna bleed once a month, here's a pad, wear that to deal with the blood, and that be that. It's not until really I got to be an adult and a little more comfortable with myself and my body that I researched other things. I use menstrual cups, I use period panties, I use reusable pads, but there's so many other things that, some women like tampons, some women can't, won't, and that's okay. Like, they should have that choice and that ability. It's their body. Let's not go there too much, because I could go on a rant, but there should be more knowledge and more conversation, and instead it's like this dirty little secret almost of like, ooh, you're on your monthly, ew, that's gross, go deal with it somewhere else. We don't want to talk about that or deal with that. The shame, the stigma, the just awfulness that surrounds talking about this, the fact that this is almost embarrassing for me to even talk about, because it's a natural part of my body that's happening. Whether it is because it's something that is abnormal in my body, it's still affecting something that's pretty normal to my regular body and something that is a part of my body. Try to avoid getting too preachy or ranty or anything, but there's an issue there. There's definitely an issue that I didn't know. I had never ever heard of the word perimenopause. I still don't know enough about it. I'm still researching it and trying to figure out things about it. But apparently, from what I know, it's a period before you actually hit menopause. And it can last up to, from what I've researched, 10 years. 10 years of a woman's life of potentially irregular periods or just things going on, so many symptoms that I don't even want to deal with it all, because it's just hurt, like, ugh, like I have to deal with all of that. It's frustrating. It is frustrating. It's the hormones that it's dealing with, the mood swings I have had. I've been crying sometimes, and I don't know if that's what it is. Is that just what it is? Is it my time to be ending soon? This is the start of the next 10 years, and then in 10 years I will be menopausal? Like, I don't know, because typically menopause is usually between the ages of 45 and 50. I believe 55 maybe on the other end. That's statistically what I've researched, is that's when most women hit menopause. And that is so many of our wonderful women going through something that is just hushed and like swept away, and just go deal with it. And instead, sometimes you're seeing jokes about it, like, oh, she's just going through her time of the month. She's, fire and flames happening. And it's like, we have to laugh. We have to, because the alternative is to scream at the fact that why is there not more research? Why is there not more understanding? Why is there not more support for people that are dealing with something going on in their bodies? As I said, I could get a little ranty about this if I'm not careful. It's a bit scary. And I know my doctor told me not to be scared. Like, he said it could just be changes. That's still scary in a way. That's still sad to me to think of. Even if everything is good, my body's good, ultrasounds come back, everything is good, it's a bit of like facing your mortality in a way that is a little overwhelming sometimes. And it's a little bit of like, we place so much value on that as women, of the ability to produce children, even though, again, people don't have, that might not be people's choice. It might not be what people want to do, and that is what they should have as a human being. They should have that right to that decision on what happens in that regard. But people have children, people don't. That's all an individual choice, and whatever barriers they might face in other ways. Don't want to get too off topic, or, well, even though it's all kind of under the same umbrella, I don't want to, that's beyond a me conversation. That's every individual has that as their own conversation. My thing is that it's just something that there's so much question that surrounds it, and like so much variables, that it's hard in some ways, but it makes it even harder because we're not having those conversations. We're not talking about how this is so normal, and how, like, what different periods might be like, and what different cycles. And yeah, okay, maybe we don't want to, I don't know, maybe we do. I was just gonna say, maybe we don't want to sit there and like have a conversation every day and get into like all the details, but maybe we do. Maybe we do need to get into the nitty-gritty so that it's not such a taboo thing. My girls shouldn't be ashamed of what's happening to their body, or ashamed of something that is very natural part. Like I remember so many times being embarrassed or just like shy, and even just sometimes it's talking about it in front of men, and sometimes it's talking about it in front of other women. You're just like, oh, sorry, I don't want to be like gross or like TMI or anything, but it's such it's like it's such a regular part. And yeah, some people are gonna equate it with, well, I don't want to sit there and hear about you like talking about your pee or your bodily functions. Like I think that's the tabooness, like the fact that I'm even like, oh my god, like, oh no, don't talk about it, is because it is so taboo. It is so like, oh no, go sit in the corner and don't. It just makes me sad for some of all of us out there who maybe don't know what's going on or don't have the proper supports. And even myself, like I've reached out to my mom and I've reached out to my mother-in-law and just asked a bit of theirs, but even their like situations vary from what mine is. So it's not like I can go, oh, you had that exact thing happen, okay, that's what exactly is going to happen to me. But maybe if we had more people talking about it and it was more readily available and we just heard some, we could understand that this is something that could happen and this is something that is very real and is a part of life. So yeah, this was just a bit of a ranty, there's not much that I can even say because I'm still in that learning research phase. We're still trying to figure out what's going on. I've still got blood work coming up, as I said. I've got an ultrasound booked, which is going to be an internal one, which sounds really fun. And it's just to get a good idea of, is there something more that we should be concerned about and should, get on top of, or is this just my time? Is this the start of my time and this is going to be the start of the next how long it takes until my body goes into menopause? And for anyone that doesn't know, because I didn't know this before starting to research, menopause is actually defined when a woman does not have a period for 12 months. So if you have not had a period for 12 months, you are in menopause. I thought I would share this because of the lack of information and the fact that it's not being talked about enough, and I didn't even really know about it. So I'm probably gonna go rabbit hole to research more about the women's body and just cycles and things like that, but that is what I've been dealing with. So if you know me and you've noticed I've been grumpy or just having a time, it's because I've been bleeding for more than 20 days. So it's a fun time. I joke because if not, I will cry. So don't be afraid to have conversations. I hope this becomes something I would love to see in the future, where we just continue to have conversations. We continue to break down some of these taboo subjects and make them not as taboo, especially when it's something that affects so many people around the world. And there just should be more research and knowledge and conversation about it, and women shouldn't feel so dirty all the time for something that is such a natural part of their lives and affects so many of us. The thing is that what's really mind-boggling to think is that the majority of women, a woman with a uterus who is having monthly cycles, regular monthly cycles, is at some point in their life going to hit menopause. And it's just something that is not talked about, and not even like the leading up to menopause is that talked about. Like it's just oh yeah, I went through hot flashes, whew. And that's like almost all you hear about it. So we definitely need to do better at just being more honest and being more vulnerable and just letting those conversations happen and not being so upset when they do happen. If anything, encourage a nice, healthy, like respectful conversation about it, because it's something that just should be talked about. And I just hope if any of you guys are going through anything, if you're having issues with your cycle or questions, I really hope you get answers as well and can find information. Definitely recommend Dr. Mama Jones on YouTube here. I think, again, I will just plug her. She wouldn't know me from Adam, but I think she's phenomenal. She is incredible, and she's doing a great thing by just talking about stuff like this and making it a more normal part of conversation. So thank you, Mama Jones, if you ever watch this. Thank you for just being a voice for so many women. So anyways, all right, well, I'm going to leave this here. Hopefully it sparks a conversation. If you're going through it, let me know below. And I just want to let you know that, like, I'm here with you. Let's get through this together. So thank you so much. Thank you for watching. Thank you. If you like this video, I don't even want to get into that too much, but I do appreciate it. I just really hope this just helps, even to just start a conversation, or helps me maybe to document some of what's going on, because apparently my doctor said too, maybe this is gonna be a one-off that just happened this month, and then a few months down the line I'm gonna want to know when it happened. So hey, here's my documented proof of this is when it's happening. Mark it in my calendar. And if there's any major updates or anything major I can find out, or if I actually get an answer on what's going on, I will definitely update you guys, because I wouldn't want to leave you hanging of like, oh, it was this happened, or whatever it could be that it might be. I will definitely come back and give an update. So fingers crossed, it's all good, and it's just part of life. All right, well, thank you again. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, night, evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are. Thank you so much for being here. Take care of yourselves, and you will see me next time. Bye.